All right, ladies and gentlemen, Brian McGinnis here, the chair of the Finance Committee meeting, calling it to order on October 8th, 2025 at 5:30, along with Nicole Shimoni and Brian Travis. Are there any announcements? Okay, let's move to comments, suggestions, petitions by residents, taxpayers, and visitors in attendance regarding items not on the agenda. Please step up.
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. It may be a little late now, but I think the residential taxpayers could save a bunch of money if we didn't close Gay Street for the profit of some businesses, or the ones that use it pay for it. Thank you. Should bid be self-sustaining? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and questions. Just to let you know, I mean, I'm in favor of a use for the restaurants that do use Gay Street. We've discussed that prior in Smart Growth. We just have to come up with a formula of how that would work. Correct.
I'll put on the record too. I think it's a decent idea as well. And if it's a matter of putting it on Smart Growth for more conversation, if that's the right place to put it on, then we can.
I agree with that, especially as we're leading into 2026. And that way we give people time.
The Smart Growth, or is it a Finance Committee conversation? I guess that
I would start it with Smart Growth since we are already working. I think it'll get tabled one more time tonight on Smart Growth, the Chapter 90A and all of the on-street permits, because we've been talking about that internally about the management of that. So if it not a table tax, which we have not researched, or I have not, there's also the opportunity for at least permits for those and coming up with some sort of fair assessment for that as well.
Thank you. Let's move to item 4, reports, director's report on the monthly financials. Barb Leonti.
We started the month with $29,715,303 in cash. We booked receipts of $2,458,739. We spent $1,452,763, and this left us with an ending cash balance at September 30th of $30,721,279 across all funds, restricted and unrestricted. Moving over to pages 3 and 4, the variance analysis for the month ended September 30th. I have 3 highlights that I want to point out on both of these pages. We did receive our state aid in September. We received $1,093,170, which was better than our budget of $98,000. We immediately transferred this money into the pension plans, and our MMO has been satisfied for the year, which is great news. And with this state aid and the EIT 0.25 monies that we get, we were able to make contributions in excess of the MMO to both plans. We made an excess contribution of $148,771 to the non-uniform plan and $304,195 to the police pension plans, which will help our funding ratios when we get those reports from the actuary. We did receive our second payment for the PHMIC refund. We received $145,763, which is better than budget by $91,000. I was a little nervous on this line item because if we didn't meet revenue on this line item, we would have to come before council to make a transfer from the capital operating reserve fund. So I feel much better that we received this money and we're not going to have to do that. And then finally, we did receive $139,096 from the Auditor General's office. This is for the volunteer fire relief companies. We have 2 of them, the Westchester Volunteer and Good Fellowship, that we will pass this money through. Those checks have been processed. I've reached out to both companies, so they will be picking up the checks. And we have reporting requirements that have to be completed in 60 days of receipt of the money, so we will be fine with that. Those are the major highlights that I wanted to point out for September. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't have any questions. Any questions?
I just have a general question in terms of like where we are for the year and where we typically are this time of year. How are you feeling in terms of where we'll end the year?
I think that we're doing really well with our cash reserves.
Yeah.
That makes me feel confident going into year end, and especially with this budget shortfall. If we do need to use cash, I think we're in a pretty good position where it won't hurt us a lot to be able to do that. So there's some confidence there. I mean, obviously there are line items that are overspent, but we do have revenues that have come in that are better. So I think at this point in time, we're okay. And I feel a little bit better going into year end if we do need to dip into cash and with the beginning of the year when there's not a lot of money, when you're trying to scramble to make payroll and pay bills. So
Yeah, so I somehow remember like you like to have a cushion of about $3 million going in, and that I could be wrong about that, but I
yeah, I'm not a big fan of taking out a TAN note.
yeah.
Just because, you have to borrow it and then pay interest back. I'd rather have the cash on hand and then try to, put off as many projects as you can in the first 3 months until the tax money comes in. But, it is a good rule of thumb to have some cash reserves. So
That confirms what I was kind of feeling, so I
Yeah.
appreciate you
Yep.
kind of confirming that. Thank you.
Any public comment? Okay, let's move to the Finance Administration Department 2026 preliminary budget.
So I'm just going to give an overview of the whole budget where it stands right now as of October 8th. So back in September, when Mr. Matrick presented the preliminary budget, there was two major funds that were out of balance, the general fund and the wastewater fund. As of today, the wastewater fund is balanced. We did balance that fund with a 3% increase in the sewer revenues for both residential and commercial. And we did defer one capital project of $2.1 million. That was for the sludge water dewatering project. We deferred that to 2027. And we did reduce some of our projections that we had for utility expense. So that fund is now in balance. The general fund is still out of balance. In September, it was out of balance by almost $2.6 million. We have gotten that out of balance down to 387,170. We did that by looking at all of the departments in the general fund, and there's 6 departments: admin, police, housing, IT, public works, and recreation. In the admin department, we increased revenues by $170,182. That's over a few different line items, including real estate taxes, the PHMI refund, interest income, and state aid. And we did reduce expenses in the admin department by $52,549, mainly in software, fire hydrant expense. And then in the police department, we were able to decrease their expenses in capital and operating by $88,484. In the housing department, we decreased revenues by $178,650. This is in the rental permit line item. We had some high expectations in that line item to increase the rental permits, and we have since tempered that. And we did reduce expenses in that department by $217,634. We eliminated the admin position that was requested, and we reduce the third-party inspection expense. We did not make any changes to the IT department, to their capital or operating expenses. They remain the same as they were in September. Public Works, we increased revenue by $133,000. We included the recycling grant, the winter maintenance, and we increased the street openings revenue. And we decreased expenses on capital and operating, but mainly in capital, by $1,334,967. We deferred some projects and removed others. The one big one was the building. We're going to, do that design work and the building expense when we go out for the borrowing. And then we deferred some smaller projects. There was a project in there for the paving, the road paving. We're going to mainly use liquid fuels for that. And then the other big projects, we're going to go out for grant funding. We already had grant funding in progress, and then possibly look for additional grant funding for some of the other expenses. And then finally, in recreation, we increased their revenue by $10,000 in special events, and we decreased expenses by $389,500. We moved some of their capital expenses around as well. So to total all of that up, we increased revenues by 134,532, and we decreased expenses by 2,083,134. So obviously, we still have some more work to do. I know Mr. Metric will be back next week. We do have some good news on the health insurance. We had a 8.5% increase in there. I think we're going to get some relief on that, but I'll save that so he can present that next week. I don't want to steal his thunder on that. And then in talking with several, the council members on this committee, as well as Mr. Flynn and our discussion yesterday, Nicole, I think there are some line items that we can go through and get some more reduction in, and then we'll have better news for you next week.
Thank you, Barb, and thank you for your efforts with what you've done. There are two items, and I think I mentioned them to you, but I want to get on the record. The purchase of a dump truck, that's something that I don't believe deems as a need. And potentially we could use a grant to get that in the future. And then with the initial Gay Street repairs for the brick sidewalk work,
Okay.
with that comes to about 200,000. With that, maybe again we could remove those two items. That'll roughly save about $350,000 to $400,000, and maybe potentially we could use grants for both of those items when it comes to public works. And so that will get us down to almost zero.
One thing I did not mention is that we don't have the full funding in here for the Good Fellowship ask. And we only have $150,000 in for the library roof repair. I know that they're coming next week to talk to council. So those are two, I think, issues that you may need to work through. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that as well.
Oh, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Any questions for Barb?
Well, I'll make a couple of comments. When we talked, I also had questions on, do we need that High Street, Gay Street repair right now? I mean, I run through it all the time, and if we need to save some money, we probably could get another year or something out of that. So I'm kind of on the same page with you, Brian. Maybe that's a conversation point. I also brought up yesterday, it does seem to me like in the parking budget, in an effort to realign ourselves based on the change in the accounting for the garage, it looks like we added like $500,000 in expenses that weren't matched with like the reverse of the netting in the revenue side. So there's potentially some opportunity there to smooth that out, because we're taking extra expenses, but we're not balancing it on the revenue side. So that could get us quite a bit of money if we actually made those assumptions, but evened them out in a way that could then flow into the general fund. So
Yeah, that was a good catch. I saw that too, but I was drawn to the public works. It was completely out of bounds. Our revenues are going down by 40%, our expenses are going up by 40%. So it's just a matter of massaging what we have, I think, in the budget at this point. Okay.
Thank you. Any public comment? All right, Barb, thank you very much for your presentation. Old business, approve the September 2025 meeting minutes. Any objections? Okay, any public comment? We could call that approved. New business, approve the following items 1 through 5. All event party rentals, $12,185.45. That was for the restaurant festival supplies. Butts tickets, $40,000. That's 5 new kiosks. USALCO, $15,280. Phosphorus removal. Cody, $18,536.57. That's computer services, computer servers for the police department. And Horgan Tree Experts, $10,720. That's tree pruning at John O'Green Park and Marshall Square Park. Anyone have any objections to those items? Any public comment? All right, seeing none, items 1 through 5 have been approved. Is there any other business regarding the Finance Committee meeting? Seeing none, we are adjourned at 5:45.